So day 4. Fine. See, yesterday I talked about going to a website, fine, and actually opening up the browser of your choice. Right. In Selenium example, I talked about how interfaces can be used. Right. I made the small code which was going to a website and taking up the browser of your own choice. Okay. So this was the code. You just had to change the username over here. Okay. Right. So I will actually add the Selenium jar files in the new project and continue forward, and we will look at how to identify the objects. Okay, using Selenium, how you can go forward and identify the objects. That is, how you can um, actually uh, go to a website, click on a link, click anywhere else, right? How you can uh, you can say detect the web elements which are present on the page. I told you, right? Everything on a page is a web element. Okay, if you go to a web page, right? If you go to say google.com, fine. Everything on this web page is a web element. This image is a web element. This Google search button is a web element. This link is a web element. Right? Everything is a web element. Alright. So how do you recognize web elements? That's what I'm going to talk today. Right. If you uh, take a practical example, then everything over here is an HTML component. Fine. Everything on this page is an HTML component. Fine. So you need to have a little knowledge of HTML language in which the web pages are made, and then you will be able to easily understand how Selenium works and how Selenium identifies the objects on the page. Fine. Well, to learn HTML, just go to this website. Just type over here HTML tutorial. Okay. You will get a fair idea if you go to this URL wpschools.com/html. This is a small HTML tutorial. Have a look at it. Okay. At least read till HTML links. Fine. You will understand how HTML language works. Right. But I'll also give you a small overview that how it works. Right. I will just create a Microsoft Excel file. Fine. And I will make a column known as uh, tag name. Fine. Just hold on. I'll tell you what I'm doing. Fine. Then component mandatory attribute and optional attribute. I'm making some columns over here. What these columns mean, I will talk about them right now. Okay. Now, if you open up any web page, right? If I go to this, for example, this web page only. If you view the source of this web page, that is, you right click on this web page and look at the page source. Fine. You will find a code like this. This is HTML code. In HTML code, it's not a rocket science. Fine. Everything is in form of tags and attributes. What I mean to say is that whatever is there in this reddish maroon color is a tag name. Okay. These are tags. And all the other things are attributes, like ID is an attribute, style is an attribute, source is an attribute. Fine. So every other thing is an attribute. Fine. and all these main colored things are known as tag names. A tag can have multiple attributes. For example, this is a division tag. This. Okay, it's got an attribute called ID and it's got an attribute called style. Fine. And these tags and attributes make the component. Okay. So you can investigate your page source. Okay. There comes a tool known as Firebug. You can install it to investigate your page source, because to work with Selenium you will have to constantly investigate your page source. Alright. Just go to Google and uh, type in, what do you say, HTML, or you just type in Firebug. Okay, you type in Firebug, alright, and you can install Firebug into Firefox as an add-on. Alright, is my voice breaking for everyone today? Is my voice breaking? Okay, like once I say, right, you need to investigate your page. Fine. So to investigate your page, you need to install Firebug. Right. Now Firebug is a tool which helps you to investigate your page in a more efficient way. Okay. Look, you can go to the page source. You can right click and go to the page source. Okay, you can go to the page source and you can investigate your page. Fine. But the thing is, this is not a very effective way. Fine. You cannot pinpoint. If I have to find any element, that's fine. What is the HTML code corresponding to this contribute button over here? Fine. You will not able to find it out. To pinpoint it, to find it out exactly, you use Firebug. Okay. I don't have the latest version. I have Firefox 22. So you scroll down. Depending on your Firebug, you select the link. Fine. For example, I'll just click on this link and I get this page. Nothing is available on this page. Hold on. Yeah, so this one is available. You click on this link, Firebug will be installed as an add-on in Firefox. Make sure that you open this link inside Firefox. Okay, you go to this website inside Firefox. And once install it, your Firefox will be restarted and you will see an icon on the top right side. This is the icon. Okay, this is the Firebug icon. If you click on it, Firebug will open like this. It will have various tabs on the top. Fine. If you click on this cursor over here and move your mouse on the page, you will be able to see the various components on the page. Alright, fine. So now the thing is, if you move your mouse over any component, for example, I move my mouse over the register link on the top side of the page, you will see the HTML code corresponding to a register link. A link always starts with an anchor tag A and has got an attribute known as href. Fine. So every element in the page has got a certain tag name and certain set of attributes associated with it. Now some of these attributes are mandatory. That means whenever you get an element like this on the page, you will always have that particular attribute associated with it. For example, whenever you have a link, you will always have the href attribute associated with the link, which will point towards the URL which will open when you click on the link. Okay, but an attribute like ID is not a mandatory attribute. Some divisions can have ID, or some division tags, div tags cannot have, won't have any ID. Okay, so you cannot just like say that all the attributes are mandatory. No, all the attributes are not mandatory. Some of the attributes are certainly mandatory. Okay, so now let us look at what are the various HTML components, what are the tag names and mandatory and optional attributes associated with them. Fine. Okay, so one of the component is, for example, a component like text field. Okay, hold on. Then you have got a radio button. Then you have got checkbox. Then you have got normal button on the page, which is the submit button. Fine. You have got links on the page. You have got images on the page. You have got a text on the page which is visible to the normal eye. Right. So these are some of the components on the page which are visible to the normal human eye. Right. Now you need to check which component has got which tag name, which set of mandatory and optional attributes associated with it. So you can use Firebug for this. Fine. For example, for a text field, if you look at a text field from here, this is the text field. If you look at the code, it is an input box. Input is the tag name for a text field. Fine. For a text field, the tag name is input. Alright. Fine. And RAM web tables are not visible to the eye. I am talking about the elements which are just visible to the eye directly. Okay. So text field is the input box and mandatory attribute associated with the text field. Now there are many attributes associated with the text field, right? But you will always find that type equals to text. This attribute is always present. Fine, this attribute is always present. Type equals to text. This is the mandatory attribute, type equals to text for a text field. For a radio button, fine, if you go to Google and just type HTML radio, okay, and you get a link like this. Hold on. This is not opening. Okay, it's opening over here. So this is the HTML radio button. You see that? Fine. Something wrong is there with the site. Okay. For example, if I move my mouse over milk radio button over here. Fine. So this radio button is having the tag name as input, and the tag name is again input. It is same as text field. Rather, for checkbox also the tag name is always input. For a button also the tag name is always input. Text field, radio button, checkbox and normal button on the page always have the tag input, but In case of a radio button, the type attribute is equal to radio. Fine. In case of checkbox, you will find that the type is always equal to checkbox. I know it from my experience and that's what I'm telling you. And in case of a submit button, the type is always equals to submit. Fine. Okay. I'm telling you this because this is very much important. Okay. This is the basic. This is the fundamental. People don't know this and they directly try to work on Selenium and then they face issues. Okay. In case of a text field, radio button, checkbox and button, the tag names are input but the mandatory attributes they differ. In case of link, the tag name is always A. If you open up any link on any website, for example, this link over here, read more, you will see that it's an anchor tag and there's an attribute known as href which points towards the URL which will open when you click on the link. Fine. In case of a link, it is A and href is the mandatory attribute. Fine. In case of an image on a web page, right, lot of times images they come on the web page, right? Hold on. Like for example, this is an image. Okay. If you observe this image in the Firebug, the image will always be an img tag. Always. The image will always have the tag name img. And there will be a mandatory attribute known as source, which will point towards the URL from which this image is coming. Okay. If you copy this URL, hold on. If I just copy this URL, just turn up. This has got some pop-up coming up. Yeah, if I copy the URL and open the URL in a new tab, you will see the image will load. Okay, so image has got an attribute known as img and an attribute known as source, which means the server from which or the URL from which the image is being loaded. Okay, text. Text cannot be a normal text which is present on the page. The text which is generally written cannot be categorized into any tag name. Sometimes it's in para tag, sometimes in span tag, sometimes in div tag. Okay, the list continues. You cannot just specify or you cannot just categorize the normal text which is written on the web page into a certain category. Okay, but there is no mandatory attribute as well. There is no mandatory attribute with text. Okay, so these are some of the HTML components. If you think there is some other component apart from this, do let me know. Fine, right? And these are the tag names and mandatory attributes with them. Now there are some optional attributes at times, ID and class. These are the most general or name. Okay, these are the most general attributes which are optional attributes and they can or they cannot be present with elements. It is purely up to the discretion of the developer. Okay, now if you have to identify any element on the page, for example a button, a text field and all with Selenium, the work becomes very easy if the element has got an ID or a name. I'm not talking about class over here. If the developer has given that particular element a unique ID or a unique name, then it makes the work easy. I hope you got my point. Right? Generally, ID and name for an element is supposed to be unique. Fine, generally, but sometimes developers also do the mistake that suppose there are two buttons on the page. Fine, developers give the same ID to both the buttons. These kinds of mistakes do happen, but generally the case is that both the buttons will have different IDs. Fine. For example, if you go to the website Gmail, the simplest form of example which can be taken. Okay, and over here okay, over here if you observe this thing, this is an input with the ID email. Fine, this is an input box with the ID email, right? And if you look at the other one, this is a password with the ID equals to email again. Sorry, with the ID equals to password. So developers have given unique ID and ID to these fields. So identifying these fields with Selenium will become very easy. Fine, but if you look at this, it's also got a name. Name is also there. So the developers are nice, right? They have given a lot of things. But you cannot expect an ID or name to be present with every element on the page. If you look at, for example, the text on the top, sign in to continue to Gmail. Fine. So it's an H2 tag heading to with this class. Okay, there is no ID or there is no unique name. Fine. So it will become a little tough to identify this. We'll have to use something known as XPath to identify this, right? I'll talk about it later on. But talking about the class attribute, fine. I talked that ID and name can be unique, but class it cannot be unique. Don't think that if an element on the page is having a particular class, this class will be unique to that element. No, some other element on the page can also have the same class. Generally, the elements with the same look and feel have the same class. For example, if I go to this website n.reddit.com, okay, and I go to the money section, right, and if you take an example of this text field, okay, or if you hold on, instead of money, if you go to shopping, okay, if you go to shopping, then over here you have got various products listed. Every product has a buy now button on it. You see that various buy now buttons on this page. Okay, if I look at any one of the buy now buttons, fine, it's a division with the class add to cart button white. If I look at any other button as well, this will also be a division with the same class. Generally, the elements with the same look and feel have the same class. So class is not unique. All these buy now buttons will have the same class because they have the same look and feel. Okay. So you just cannot say that the optional attribute class is unique for every element. Yes, ID and name can be unique. Okay, and they can be specifically used to identify the object on the page. Fine. Now, how Selenium identifies the objects and what are the various mechanisms in Selenium which can identify the object on the web page? Well, that answer can be found from the documentation of Selenium. If you go by seleniumhq.org, look, guys, I'll take a shorter class today. The reason being, I have to visit a very important, like I have an appointment with the dentist, right? Okay. Okay, the question being asked, if same ID is given to the multiple elements on the web page, then there'll be a problem. Yes, there will be a problem, and you will. Generally, the ID is supposed to be unique, and you need to talk to the developer that was to go and correct the IDs. Okay, IDs are supposed to be unique. Okay, now there is a class known as by. This class has got mechanisms used to locate the elements within a document. Document means the HTML page. Okay, and here are the various mechanisms. By the class name, how we use it, I'll talk about it, but right now I'm telling you. There is something known as CSS selector also which we can use. Okay, by the ID. This is the most easy thing. Fine. By the link text. If you have any link text, you can identify the object with the link text as well. By the name of the object. Okay. By the partial link text. By the tag name. What do you mean by tag name? These were the tag names. Input. You can just identify the object with the tag names as well. We'll do all these examples. Okay. I'll tell you. Fine. And by the XPath. Generally, XPath and CSS selector is used when an object has got nothing, no ID, no, you cannot just identify the object directly and very easily. These two are used at that times. Fine. I'll talk about those scenarios and I'll talk about how these are used. Fine. I have to actually end the class today early. I have an appointment. I have some problem, right? So I'll send you the recorded URLs.